Hello everyone, welcome to our group conference. My name is Jiamin Wang and I will be the host of today's group discussion on the topic of local culture with the cultural and sustainable development in China. Here are my group members, Yuting Hu, Menglin Xu, and Wanqing Zhao, who will share their fantastic research outcomes on some of China's traditional industries. As is known to all, our life quality is getting better with the development of advanced modern technology, such as the existing of mechanization in the early years, as well as the mobile network, which is widely used everywhere nowadays. The process of modernization has penetrated into almost every aspect of people's life. So do the cultural and creative industries. Traditional cultural industries are undoubtedly affected by the trend, which has borne the question of how these industries are influenced and how should these industries keep pace with the time. As a result, each of our group members has selected one kind of Chinese traditional cultural industries. They are costume, drama, language, and handcraft industry. Now let's start it from Yuting Hu, who will give us a discussion on Hanfu.
Hello, my name is Yuting. It is unavoidable that modernization would have an impact on Chinese traditional culture in the process of development, and the Chinese traditional dress is an important part of Chinese material culture. So in my section, I will take Hanfu, which refers to the historical hand clothing styles of China, as an example to analyze the challenges faced by Chinese traditional dress in the process of modernization, try to offer some suggestions on how to realize a sustainable development of local culture by balancing the modern culture and traditional culture in China, and try to realize intergenerational equity of local culture for the public. It's a historical clothing style of Chinese people. Hanfu has a long history throughout the dynastic succession in China. The styles of Hanfu in every dynasty of China could be very similar with few differences. Since the Han Dynasty, Chinese clothing had developed varied styles and absorbed favorable elements in foreign cultures. There are two special periods in the history of Hanfu. One is the Qing Dynasty, in which the Manchu ethnic group is in power. The style of clothing and haircut in China is forced to change, which could be one cause of the dying out of traditional Hanfu. And the Manchu influences clothes the qipao, which is popularly considered to be the de facto traditional Han Chinese garb by people in other countries. However, the history of Jiangxi is too short to be the traditional dress of Chinese people. The other is the Republic of China, in which the old and closed Chinese society is in a shock with of the Western culture, which has a large impact on every corner of the Chinese traditional costumes, including the clothing styles and the styles of dress in China is westernized to a great extent. As you can see in the picture, Puyi, the last emperor of China, who took a photo with his wife, was wearing a suit. Nowadays, the present situation of Hanfu is more pessimistic. Firstly, we do not have the opportunities like some festivals or the graduation to wear our traditional clothing in our daily life comparing with other countries such as Korea and Japan, as well as other ethnic minorities in China. As you can see in the picture, we wear the academic dress in the university graduation of China, which come from the Western countries. Secondly, Chinese people do not know how to wear Hanfu. The details of Hanfu are numerous and complicated, but most people in modern China even don't have a general knowledge of how to wear it. Moreover, the fake Hanfu products in the markets, which are below standard, make things worse. Although some enthusiasts advocate the revival of Hanfu, they are too radical to have a right guide for people because many of them are in opposition to other ethnic minorities in China, which may lead to ultra nationalism. So Hanfu is declining in Chinese people's daily life under these circumstances. Well, what is the future of Hanfu? I think some measures could be taken to revitalize this material cultural heritage and realize the sustainable development of it. Firstly, the government should popularize the general knowledge of Hanfu to the public, such as the dress and the etiquette of it. There would be several channels to realize this goal. For instance, the mass media, including film, television, as well as books and the internet, could be used to popularize the knowledge of Hanfu. Secondly, some non-governmental organizations should be set to make professional training for people or recruit the experts in Hanfu culture, through which can make the public to pay attention to the material cultural heritage and have a correct understanding of it. Thirdly, opportunities should be created for Chinese people to wear hanfu, such as a special festival being set for it, in which people would be encouraged to wear hanfu. And the Chinese traditional festivals could also be the good opportunities for people to wear their traditional clothing. Finally, different sectors such as the textile industry and the dyeing industry, as well as some sectors in creative industries, can cooperate to standardize and perfect the industrial system of hanfu production and consumption, which would also be a great way to translate the cultural resources into economic growth. That was the end of my part. Thank you.
Thank you for Yutinghu. It was really nice to have listened to such great opinions on the special costume in China. Now it is my part. I will give you an overall perspective on the development of Chinese opera in today's context. Next, please. As one of the most mysterious performing styles to the Western culture, I guess, Chinese opera is regarded as one of China's national essence. However, data shows that the development of Chinese opera encounters bottlenecks in today's context, as shown on the PPT. In details, the opera numbers fell dramatically to only about 60 to 80 Chinese operas still give out the performance on a regular basis today. Next, please. Reasons brought by modernization can mainly be divided into two categories, internal and external, and this table briefly gives out the summary of each reasons behind. Now, I will explain some of them as following. Firstly, it has been recognized that few performers are in this field as the former skilled actors grow old, while fewer young people take the role. Lacking innovation is one of the most serious problems which arouse controversy as well. It has been pointed out that Chinese opera as an Asian form of entertainment takes a high proportion of legend, dialect, and historical elements, with some ideas and values go far away from today's aesthetics. However, reforms are hard to implement as well, because it would be never easy to draw the line between new and classic. As a result, except for those expert lovers, fewer people are interested in live opera and drama performance because they are always time-consuming and expensive. Next, please. Now, here are some possible suggestions for the current situation. First and most importantly, Chinese opera needs the help from the authority. For instance, in 2016, the State Council issued several policies on supporting the inheritance and development of traditional Chinese opera and put forward 7 requirements for the development of Chinese opera. Details are shown on the PPT, but it is not yet enough. From my own point of view, more detailed policies should be put forward to focus on the cultivation of talents and the protection of existing operas in this field. Secondly, innovation is an urgency. It is recommended that Chinese opera can cooperate with modern national orchestras and high-tech stage technology in order to present a combined audiovisual performance in a more acceptable way. Thirdly, commercialization needs to be put emphasis on. In other words, it requires marketing and publicity so that it could get sustainable development in cultural economy. The aim is to get more exposure through commercial ways. As shown on the PPT, Chinese opera can cooperate with restaurants, for example. It is also recommended that Chinese opera could make full use of tourism effect to make itself more acceptable. That's the end of my part. Now let's welcome Mengling Xu to give us the discussion on Chinese minority language.
Hi, I'm Mengling Xu. I will continue the analysis through the example of languages. China has 55 ethnic minorities and over 130 dialects and national languages. In fact, more than 50% of the national languages in China are now under threat, and many are spoken only by the elderly. In recent government statistics, Mandarin has a penetration rate of more than 80% in mainland China, and the media regarding this as a positive development. But from a cultural perspective, could this be seen as another sign of the decline of other languages? We will make a brief study of how modernization has impacted and challenged minority languages. Next page. More than 130 languages spoken record in China. Most are endangered, with the exception of a few common languages, such as Uyghur. For example, Figure 1 shows an ethnic woman from Yunnan province, China, the new nationality. There are 4 branches of new nationality, each of which speaks a different language, and the Alone language is the most endangered. The same is true of the Manchu from Figure 2, which few of their descendants can use fluently despite the fact that their ancestors founded the latest dynasty in Chinese history. So what caused this situation? First, the process of urbanization has impacted greatly on minority languages. Minorities were heavily invited by the Han culture. Their population is sparse, and most of them have intermarried with Han Chinese and moved to the cities. Minority languages in a diverse environment are more vulnerable to extinction. Secondly, the development of globalization forces the frequent use of loanwords, exacerbating the loss of native language. Owing to the difference in development between local and modern cultures, many people are reluctant to use their mother tongue, even with their own community. In addition, when communities are closed, it is relatively easy to maintain national languages. However, people away from their hometowns have become accustomed to communicating in Mandarin. Other pressures from society, such as employment, also force young people to become fluent in Mandarin first, rather than nation languages. Next, please. So how to sustainable the Chinese minority languages? Firstly, the language must have a practical aspect and people needed to be aware of the value of bilingual skills. In areas with large minority populations, such as Inner Mongolia in China, the government could aid a Mongolian language option to the selection of national civil servants with extra advantages of those people. Secondly, we should systematically protect the language and culture of the local. For example, China's launch of the Language Resources Protection Project in 2015 is a good start. Another measure would be for schools to aid a week lesson in the ethnic language. Education is a very effective way. Certainly, the documentation and archiving of endangered language resources is an important aspect. We need to salvage existing languages for permanent preservation through written materials, which will provide strong academic support for the long-term development of linguistic diversity. That's all my presentation.
Thanks, Melingxi. Now let's welcome our last speaker, Wan Qingzhao, to share some ideas on Chinese traditional handcraft industry.
Hello everyone, I'm Wendy. Handicraft is an important part of Chinese traditional culture. Now I will take embroidery as an example to analyze the challenges that modernization brings to Chinese traditional handicraft. In China's 5,000 years of history, Chinese working people have used their hands and their wisdom to create countless artistic treasures. These traditional Chinese handicrafts not only have a strong use value, but also have ornamental value. Hand embroidery is a kind of art that adds human design and productions to any exciting fabric by hand using needles and threads. It is also one of the most precious species in China's intangible cultural heritage protection. The most famous range of hand embroidery is located in Suzhou in southern China. The current society is full of products of modern science and technology. It is difficult for traditional handicrafts to appear in our field of vision anymore. They are gradually declining or even disappearing. Many excellent traditional handicrafts have passed away one after another. How to preserve traditional handicrafts in the future and contemporary life, and preserve the artistic treasures born in Chinese traditional culture is something worth of our deep consideration and attention. The advantages of hand embroidery is that each work has its own characters, strong artistry and rich product types, like flowers, birds, and landscapes. It has a fine workmanship, showing a three-dimensional effect. The disadvantages of it are time-consuming and expensive. The advantages of machine embroidery, especially computer-raised embroidery machine, is mass production, fast embroidery speed, low price, and firmer. And the disadvantages of that is not artistic and very machinal. Let's talk about how to break through the challenges faced by traditional handicrafts. First, we should focus on the cultivation of inheritors. The cultivation of inheritors include two aspects: spiritual culture and skills. Inheritors must teach in strict accordance with the culture and technical requirements of traditional handicrafts. Then the government should issue relevant legal protection policies to protect traditional handicrafts. As we all know, the production of traditional Chinese handicrafts is a very difficult task, requiring long-term exercise and intensive practice by craftsmen. Therefore, we should introduce some relevant laws to protect the interests of inheritors and protect their labor achievements.
Okay, thank you, Wan Qingzhao. It was really nice to see ways of break through the challenges faced by traditional Chinese handicrafts. Now that everyone has presented their research outcomes, now let's do some discussion about the topic. Anyone has some questions?
Yeah, I have a question. And do you think all the kinds of Chinese traditional culture needs to be inherent?
Well, I think the viewpoint that all cultural traditions need to be protected through one-sided approach to problems, because not all traditional cultures are good, or in other words, not all traditional cultures are in line with the contemporary values, such as food binding, which not only violates people's freedom but also does an injury to their body. So this traditional culture or this tradition has been abandoned by the government of Qing Dynasty and the government of the Republic of China. So I think not all the traditional culture needs to be protected. We need to choose the one which worthy to be protected. That's my opinion.
Wow. Any more questions?
Yeah, my question is, do you think that under the development of modernization, all traditional culture has received our impacts and challenges?
Well, I think the impact of modernization also promotes the development of culture. For example, machine-made productions can greatly improve the production speed, and cultural products can meet the market demand more quickly.
Great answer. Any questions again? Okay, let's turn to the end of our group conference today. It can be seen that it's really a tough question to balance the relationship between traditional industries and modernization in today's content. What we need to do is to try to avoid the negative impacts on those traditional industries and keep on exploring new ways of protecting them. So our discussion is only part of the topic, and there is still a long way to go. Thank you for listening.